So the install process was incredibly easy. Because this is a tool that was made in the past 5 years, basically. So the install was pretty easy, and this came out basically after like Docker and containerization came out. So instead of installing on bare metal, I'm doing it with Docker. So there was a 1-page install. I literally copied it, telling you how to install it on Linux. I literally copied that, pasted it into ChatGPT 01, asked, how can I do this on Windows? It gave me a step-by-step. I literally did all of those steps, and it worked. And now this is the Docker image running, right? And it's really quick to bring up, really quick to bring down. Like, it's not, this wasn't built to use Internet Explorer. So we've got that going for us.
Right.
So it's got modern technology. Like
it's not an ancient BI stack.
Yep. The data stack is all just a big list of open source stuff for Superset. So that's a really nice part of it. And the install is super easy. All right, that's enough for the install and background. How about I just start showing the tool?
Yeah, let's get into it. So easy to install. That's the takeaway.
Easy to install.
At least if you're doing like a single image,
if you're doing, so like the install provides like a single image, like install for like a development environment, and that's what I've worked on. If you're doing a production environment, that will be more involved.
Sure.
Right. Because one thing you'll find as I go through demoing this product is that a lot of the features you want, you have to almost build yourself. Essentially, now the demo, like the demo Docker image they give has a lot of that stuff set up. But if you're doing production, like you're setting up your own cache database, right? Open source Redis, like you're setting it up yourself, right? And you're setting up the connections, and you're setting up the connections to AD or LDAP, and you're setting all these things up. So, and that will tie into what I think this tool is good for and not good for. So,
all right, so let's jump in. Let's look at the feature set.
Okay. Let me bring this bad boy back over here. All right. Sharing my screen. So the first thing you'll see, this is the home page, and like the first thing you'll notice is that it's fairly, I would call it fairly like basic as far as like what you're seeing. You're seeing like recents, dashboards, charts, saved queries, all that sort of stuff, right? And this is the home page. It just shows recent things you viewed in the different areas that exist inside the tool. Now, what are the different areas that exist inside the tool? Right. So we have the settings here. We have like database connections and different security stuff. I'll get into security stuff later. Alerts and reports. I'll get into that later. But the main area you'll be working in when you're developing reports will be up here along the top, right? This SQL tab, datasets tab, charts tab, and dashboards tab.
Okay.
Right? Now the flow of work, like when you're like building something, it goes right to left from these tabs, right? Our quick site demo was on the left. It was a left pane that came out. It went bottom to top. This is at the top. It goes right to left. And this is kind of the order of what you go through things with, right? So I guess I'll start in the very right with the data source connection, right?
Okay.
So database connections over here, right? So it comes like this is the development image that they give you, right? So
it comes with its own Postgres database.
Postgres, so you can add more, right? Select a database, Postgres, Presto, MySQL, SQLite, or Apache Spark, Google Sheets, Presto, like a whole bunch of other stuff.
It's a decent list.
Yeah. So like this tool is built on open source, like everything. So like refer to what is it used for its connections to database? It uses SQL Alchemy, right? An open source thing. So like if they don't support it and you have a SQL Alchemy URI for whatever database tool you're using, you can put it here and test it. Is it guaranteed to work? No. But you'll find that even the supported features aren't guaranteed to work. Right? This is open source. That's the name of the game, baby.
Right.
Right. There's no, huge company. Like if there's a problem, huge companies and they use Superset, they're fixing it themselves and maybe contributing that to the open source. There's no sales team for Superset.
Right.
Though there is, as an aside here, there is a company that uses Superset as the base for their BI offering, cloud BI offering they have, and that is Preset, right?
Yeah. And
it's basically base Superset with like some like more APIs, a few more features, that sort of stuff. I'm not going to go into that because this is the open source version and I'm sticking with open source.
But it's similar to like DuckDB versus MotherDuck, or like
exactly
Trino versus all the Trino commercial vendors.
Yep. Except Superset preset. Like they don't officially own or maintain Superset.
Okay.
Right. They contribute to it, and sometimes they'll create new features and they'll just add it to preset, not add it to Superset. Sometimes they'll add it to Superset. But
Gotcha.
Superset, it's Apache, so it's like a top level project on their like open source projects, and like I'm not exactly sure what the implications are of that, but like it was created by Airbnb, and then like as part of like a founders contest or something like that, and ended up becoming part of Apache. Right now, it's supported by Apache and Airbnb and all that other stuff. So that's some of the background. So yeah, you can connect anything here, and there's nothing crazy here. Actually, there is some crazy stuff. You could allow some stuff here that like I would very much advise against. Like, so it's one of the main views here is like a SQL editor. Like, so you're writing SQL in this tool. So allow create table, allow create view, like as like an enterprise BI. So if you're a small team, maybe you do this, and this is what you use to write SQL, this tool, then do it. If you're an enterprise BI tool, do not allow people to create tables directly in the database.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
No, that's generally frowned upon for your self-service BI users to be creating tables in your data warehouse.
Yeah, that'll become a big mess, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so then there's a whole bunch of advanced stuff, metadata parameters, engine parameters. If you really need that stuff, you can get into it, right? This is open source.
But overall, the data source connections are like, it has a few out of the box, a lot of the ones you would want. And then it's got some open source, database connection technology embedded into it. So anything that can interact with, you can presumably do through here, but it might require some fiddling.
It'll require some fiddling. That'll be the theme of this.
Okay.
Is that if you want to productionalize this, it may require some fiddling.
Okay.
Right? Which may not be the right tool for everybody, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's database connections, pretty straightforward. Like I would call the interface of all of these pop-ups like maybe call them like standard or like unmodified modern web tool, right?
Yeah.
It's like this is what stuff looks like when something comes out in the past 5 years, right? The drop downs, the modals, the pop-ups, like it looks clean, it's not nothing crazy, nothing to even really talk about. Right? So
unobtrusive.
Yes, unobtrusive. Like so I said the order. Now there are some using this sometimes at first I was getting confused because like there's no visual delineation of where you are exactly and everything's a different tab. So I'd be like, where was I? But that gets better as I've used this a bit, but that's every tool. So the order is SQL, dataset, chart, dashboard. So let's start with the SQL. Let's go to SQL Lab. And this is straight up just SQL. This is a SQL editor, run queries, that sort of stuff. You can see what schemas you have in the Postgres database. SDB job tracker is one table I added. And it gives you a preview of everything just like in that table. And then, you can write your SQL here, right? I'm just doing a select star. So like it's going to look the same, but
yeah.
And there you go. And then like, so you can do joins, anything you can do in SQL, you can do in here. Essentially anything the database supports, you can do in here.
So
right.
So does it operate from an assumption then that you like the way you get data into this?
Yes.
Is you write SQL and then that SQL result set becomes what?
A data set? So
that's what I'm thinking. And just for everybody watching, like I've never seen this tool before.
Yeah.
So I'm coming into this totally blind.
That's not exactly how it works. Right.
Okay.
So like you write this SQL. Now you can do joins between tables in a database. You cannot join between databases, right?
Okay. So there's no federation.
Nope. So like within this database, I can do joins, and then that becomes so. This is like the SQL lab, and so there are two things this SQL can become, essentially, right? It can become if I just hit save.
Yep.
This becomes a query, demo query.
Okay.
Blah, blah. I hit save, right? Now I'm going to, and here are the saved queries, right? Notice I'm opening it in a new tab because I don't want to, that'll happen a lot when you're using this at first. You'll like leave something because you go somewhere like, oh, I'm not Oh, I closed out of that thing. Crap.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So here's the demo query. And what this is literally just that saved SQL.
Okay.
Right. So if you're using this as like a data exploration, I'm a SQL writer tool, then you would just have these queries, you'd have them saved, you'd run them, that sort of stuff. Right. So if I hit edit on here, it just takes me to this interface.
It takes you back into the SQL lab.
Yeah. Takes you back in the SQL lab.
Gotcha.
Right? So I'm back in this SQL lab. So like if you're just using it like that, you're some sort of data analyst. You just write SQL. This is the tool you use to write SQL and save queries. It's open source, so it's free. So if you like it, set it up and do it. It's free, right? And then you can download the CSV, right?
Okay.
And then that will give you the entire table.
Does it have like type ahead or anything like that in the SQL?
It has
editor?
some of that, but I've let's see, position,
yeah. Yeah, there's a little, okay. So it's like auto-filling field names and that sort of thing.
But it doesn't like this, since this has a space in it, this should have,
it should be in quotes. Yeah.
It should be in quotes, but it doesn't do that.
Okay.
So it has autofill, but it's not, it's
pretty
which is
basic.
very nice, but it's basic. It's not contextual autofill. It's like autofill, here are your columns, which is nice, but it's not like, oh, this needs to be in quotes.
Yep.
Like that. Right. So let's see here. Yep. So I said there were two options, essentially. So one was if you just hit save, it saves as a query. If you hit save data set, right? Actually, let me get rid of this so that it doesn't error out.
Yeah.
Right. If you hit save data set, right? So, okay. So like I just did select star. So let me actually go to my notes and pick up some more advanced SQL just so I'm not just doing the most basic thing in the demo, right? I'll do it instead of the most basic. I'll just do a very basic thing, right? I added an extra column at the end,
okay,
which is position status sort, which you'll find out later why that's there. It's because of a weird behavior that I needed to work around, which you'll find also happens just like every BI tool. Okay, so I saved it as a query. So if I want to come back and mess with it, then I can save this as a data set. Right? When you say this as a data set, it becomes detached from the query and gets saved as a virtual I call it like a virtual table.
Okay.
That's what they call it. But so like save data set, SDB demo job tracker data set.
Okay. Now, when you hit this,
yes,
is it actually extracting the data and loading it into something?
Nope.
Okay.
It is not doing that. You can set up caching. I'll talk more about that later.
Okay.
But it is not doing that. It is basically saving off a copy of this SQL, right, as a data set, a virtual table, and you can edit that as a data set later, right? So it's a bit weird. It's like, so if you just want to like mess with stuff in this Query Explorer, you save it as a query, right? If you want to start building dashboards off of this SQL, you save it as a data set, and you can edit the SQL in that data set later.
Okay.
The data set is just that saved SQL with some other things you can do to it.
Okay. The distinction right now is quite fuzzy to me, but hopefully it'll become clear as we keep going.
It was very fuzzy to me too.
Okay.
Right. So it took me like, okay, what is this? Why is this? Because there's this save button, and then I hit save and it saves as a query. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I do this data set thing? What's going on?
Yeah.
Right. But it is not like a data set's not an in-memory thing. Like it's like you hear data set, you think, oh, it digests the SQL in memory.
That is exactly what I think. Like we're doing some extract and load into Parquet.
Nope. You can set up, like, this is open source, so you can set up like a Redis, like in memory
cache.
Yeah, as a Redis cache, and you set that up, right? And that's where the cache lives, and you set up cache refresh and like all that sort of stuff, right? And then you can use the API to like do the cache refresh every morning for like the busy dashboards, yada yada.
Yeah.
But you are setting that up. You're not scheduling it in here. You are setting that up.
So it's okay. Okay. So now we've created a SQL query. Now we've created a data set. Those things are not the same thing.
They are not the same thing.
But the difference between them is not clear yet, but I suppose that's what you're about to get to.
Basically, the difference is what it lets you do next.
Yep. Okay. So let's see that.
Let's save this. So one thing this does that a lot of BI tools do is like it'll automatically take you to like the next step of building a chart, but that's not actually your next step, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just save the query as a data set. You'd want to go to the data set and see what that looks like, but it opens it as a chart.
Okay.
Right. And like, so like this time it opened it as a new tab. Sometimes it opens it as the same tab.
Yeah.
That confused me at first.
We do have a question from Aaron. He says, is this a desktop application?
Oh, so this is, so you noticed it is like a web application, but you can run it locally as a desktop application fairly easily. Right. Notice I'm going to localhost and then the port number. That happened. That's just like anything with a web interface when you're not broadcasting to the internet, right? Or your local like router setup, your local network. It's just localhost. So I got this set up in half an hour, right? And like, so I I followed the instructions, downloaded Docker, installed all the stuff from the command line. It took me half an hour, right?
But it's not
now
like
I'm
a Windows install next. No.
So you are doing the setup, but like the guide's pretty good. And like it's like I said earlier, I took the guide, I put it into ChatGPT-O, and I said, how do I do this in Windows? It said install Docker for Windows. And then it gave me all the steps. I literally just followed those steps one by one. In half an hour, I had this set up.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right. So
okay. So now we're looking at data sets.
Now we're looking at data. No, because it took me to the charts.
Right.
For no reason. Now we're looking at data sets. It came with lots of demo data sets. So this filter up here is kind of nice. I'm going to change it to Superset admin because that's what I'm logged in as.
Okay.
Let me get a drink of water. I've been talking.
Yeah.
Right. So we just created that SDB demo tracker data set. Right. So there is some inconsistent like user training language here. So if I click this, instead of taking to like the edit data set view, it'll take me to a chart. But if I click on a chart, it'll take me to edit chart. If I click on a dashboard, it'll take me to view and edit the dashboard. So like there's a little bit of inconsistent language of like what you are trained to do here.
Okay.
Right? But that's, using it, you'll get used to it. End users wouldn't see this anyway. Right. Well, actually, that's not true because this is kind of an advanced tool. If you set this up for people to use, you'll find out later this is for advanced users. I would not put this in front of users without relatively heavy modification.
Okay.
But we'll get to that. So this SDB demo job tracker data set. So don't click on it because it'll open a chart. Instead, click on edit. Right. So this is the SQL. You can edit the SQL here.
Okay.
And then you can embedded in this data set, you can do some calculations. So metrics, that's for stuff like counts, sums, yada, yada. Right. Calculated columns.
It's like if you want to create an attribute or something.
Yeah. If or like something like, let me actually have an example here. Like here, and it's just a straight up SQL expression.
Classic.
Which in a lot of ways is very nice. Right. Yeah. I like having just writing SQL. I'm not writing DAX. I'm not writing some weird stuff. I'm writing SQL for these, what in Cognos would be data items, essentially, for any Cognos users watching this.
Yeah.
But would be calculated columns here. I think they're called calculated columns in Power BI as well. But
so is there any like calc builder UI or anything like that? Or is it's just SQL?
You're just writing SQL. So one thing I've found is that I am editing this SQL expression, but it's like just a raw SQL expression. Like there's no autocomplete here. Right. So I found myself often keeping I have to keep this column name in my head. Right. Or like have another tab where I have that other tab open to see stuff. Yeah. Right. And in their documentation, they even suggest that if you're building a SQL expression for a calculated column, maybe do it in the query builder. Do it in the query builder first so you can test it live. Now, it would be nice if I could preview here.
Oh, there's no preview button.
There's no preview or even validate the syntax.
Okay.
But there's not. So
you're creating a custom field essentially, or custom column, right? With this case statement. And this is where you write it, but there's no way for you to validate SQL or see the result or anything like that.
Not until I open it in the chart builder and try it.
Okay. So that's a little incongruous. I can see it would be You're going to want to have 2 monitors open or something like that.
Yes. You will find that so one of the themes when we did the QuickSight interview, that like everything was built for purpose. I think I called it at the time. Also, like, oh, this makes sense. This makes sense. Here, everything is built so it exists as a tool for you to use.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, it can do this. Yes, it can do this. You're using these tools to create your own kind of custom thing, but this is not a plug and play solution.
Okay.
For end users, or even for you. Well, for advanced users, it's even then it's not a plug and play because you have to modify it for like the end. End use case.
So what I'm kind of seeing here with these data sets is almost like the data set is almost like a metadata layer on top of a SQL query. So this is where you would define additional stuff.
Yep. And then, like, the way it works is if you have these calculated columns, right? If in the chart builder, if you use that calculated column, it inserts that calculated column or the metric into the SQL.
Yep.
Right. So if you use that calculated column, it's in the SQL. If you don't, it's not. That's how I believe it works.
Okay.
Right. Because that's what would make sense. And I think that's the behavior I've seen.
It's essentially inserting like where clauses and stuff like that.
100%. Yep.
Okay. So basically what you're doing here is you're defining a case statement that at runtime can be inserted into the where clause of the SQL.
Yes.
Yep.
That's exactly what's happening.
Gotcha.
And then there's some other stuff, like there's this certified by, like you can just type in who certified this, right?
Okay.
Which if you're just doing it manually, that's terrible because it's like you're going to type in who certified this every time. If you're doing this programmatically, because this is part of your like embedded application, then you just set that up and that's part of your like your tooling, which makes it a very nice feature. You'll find that a lot, that like this is a very nice feature if you use this to build your own embedded application.
Right.
But by itself, it's just raw.
If you're using this as like a toolkit for app analytics, app dev, then there's a lot. But if you're using it as a traditional BI tool, there's a lot of stuff that's a little kludgy or a little manual or a lot manual.
A lot manual. Yeah, like the calculated count. It's just type. There's no query builder. There's no data item builder or whatever it may be. Right. So then, I'd do that. I'd save that. Yep. And so, you notice the type here. I said this was a virtual table, right?
Yep.
So this is a virtual table. That means it has saved SQL, right?
Okay.
It has saved SQL that you built in the query builder, and now it has saved SQL. And you can edit it here. You don't have to go back to the query builder. Physical means it is a direct reference to a table. And that's the only difference.
Okay. So that is just like it doesn't have saved SQL.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's basically it's a select star instead of whatever you put in, essentially. Right?
Yeah. It's a
select star. Essentially, you can't edit the direct reference to the physical table, but it's essentially a select star, and the calculated columns inserted into the select star.
Yeah. This is confusing nomenclature to me too, because I'm automatically thinking about like physical versus virtual tables in a database, right? Or like, okay, the virtual ones, they must exist in cache, right? And the physical ones are in the underlying database, but that is not the case.
I'll get in more to this later, but like during the summary, and we go over the different points. But this is a BI tool made by software engineers.
Okay.
So a lot of the things, like you'll find, like the terminology they use isn't exactly right. Oh, they say they have a feature, but that's not really what it is. What they say they have, they're using the term, but what they built is not. Like drill throughs, what they call drill through is not a drill through. They say they have a thin semantic layer. It's like, I guess you could call this a thin semantic layer. I wouldn't call this. I'd call it like saving calculated columns. That's Excel does that.
Right.
So that's they call it. But like, so as a consequence, like some of the BI stuff is like, well, this doesn't really make sense. This wasn't coherently built as a BI tool, but lots of the options and parts are there because they're software engineers. So like, include this open source thing. So that's kind of how it, the history behind the tool comes through in the features it has, is how I would say that. Okay.
So we've got SQL statements that you can save. We've got data sets, which are kind of metadata wrappers around SQL statements where you can define additional metrics. It's like a very light data modeling.
Very light.
Okay.
It's basically like, yeah, it's the calculate comments, like insert these in the where clause.
So at runtime.
It's at runtime. It's kind of data modeling, but it's not really super robust.
Okay.
Kind of data modeling. But okay, so you have the data set. So from a data set, you can build a chart. So you can just click on it and then SDB demo job tracker data set, and then it'll open the chart view. Or you can go to chart and go to create chart in the top right.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, when you go to tabs, it just doesn't save your filters.
Okay. So there's no filter state that is annoying.
That is saved. That's a little annoying. Maybe I'll do a request on the GitHub for them to add that. Who knows? Or maybe it's a development flag you can turn on. A lot of times you're going into the config files on the server and turning things on.
Gotcha.
I did that for reporting. The report, and I'll explain reporting later.
Okay.
SDB demo job tracker data set. Okay, so, and then you have the visualization builder. And here are all the different visualizations. There's a ton. It's like, man, they've got a lot. Like, how are they able to have so many?
It's
because they're using Apache eCharts, which is another open source data library. So they're just plugging that in. Like, Superset is a bundle of open source technologies.
Yeah, right? Configured to be a BI tool.
Configured to be a BI tool with a front end and all this other stuff. Like the query engine it uses, I don't know what it uses, but I doubt they totally customized it. I'm sure.
I bet it's Apache CalSite.
It probably, everything. Lots of Apache in here, since this is an Apache as well. They've got lots, but really the popular. You've got all the things. Really, I always find that like, oh, you can do all these weird charts. It's like they're not really useful. All these other chart types, they're not really useful, right? Everything you want's right here. So like if they focused more on enhancing these basic ones instead of doing these, including support for these circular categorical sand key diagrams,
right?
It might be more robust so table. This is the most important visualization in existence
in the history of visualization.
The table. It's just a bunch of stuff.
It's a fight between the table, the line chart, and the column chart.
Yep. So, and then on the left, you have the columns here. So the chart source is that data set I created.
Mm-hmm.
So you have two query modes, aggregate and raw records. Aggregate is when you want dimension here, and then we want dimension here, and then you want the metric of salary. Right, and you want this as the average, right? So this is just the builder. So average salary. You can do custom SQL here as well. So on the chart, you can also have custom SQL.
Okay.
As far as in some areas you can, in some areas you can't.
And so then you kind of have a decision to make.
Yeah.
Can you have multiple data sets off of one saved SQL query?
You can. No, they exist as separate objects. So they'll each have their own SQL saved.
Gotcha.
They exist as separate. You can have multiple charts off of one data set. So if you embed the bits and bobs of SQL in the chart, then you can have one data set and multiple different charts.
Right. Like but I'm trying to think of like, okay, is there a hierarchy where I can define metrics? And it sounds like, look, I can write a calculation here, but then it only exists in this chart. If I want the calculation to be usable across many charts, I need to put it in the data set.
You need to put it in the data set. And so you get into situations where it's like, well, I want to do something with it, like something I can't do. There's something I cannot do in the chart, right? Some calculation because of whatever reason. Like now I guess I need to spin off a new data set. That'll happen.
Okay.
That happened here when I was doing this, right? During my demo, because of the way sorting works between aggregate and raw records query modes. Right. So like the average salary, and then I just create chart, and there we go. Full-time, part-time, and there's the average salary. Aggregate mode is for totals. It's for when you're doing totals. If you want a total here, you can do that.
Okay.
How could you do raw record modes and like create a custom column that's that total? Probably. Right.
right. You could, yeah.
Could you do that? Okay. I didn't try it, but you probably could. You're just writing SQL. Why couldn't you?
So can you like, because oftentimes in what you want to do in a list or a table in a BI tool is like kind of combo those two things. Like I want the detailed records, but then I want, a summary at the bottom that tells me the total of the detail. Is that an option here?
Not with the table object.
Really?
There is a pivot table object.
They're two separate things.
They're two separate things.
Yeah.
Pivot table in Power BI, they call it a matrix. In Cognos, they call it a crosstab, but they're the same thing. I haven't really messed with the pivot table, right? But if you look at the example here, yeah, you can kind of do that.
Yeah, it's a multi-axis table.
But like you can't, it's not like as far as like these visualizations, they're just like from this open source Apache eCharts library.
So it's probably a situation, I'm just going to guess, like, yeah, that could be done if you go to eCharts and you customize, you go into the eCharts JSON definitions and copy it and add new features yourself and then load it into Superset. Yeah, you can have feature set X, but out of the box, it's not going to have it.
No.
Gotcha.
No.
So it's weird. Like they have a huge library of charts, but each chart is in itself not super feature rich.
Yes. Like you can do the things that you could do with that chart, and they have added on top of, I'm sure, the basic, right? Because you just need it to be any sort of BI tool. But yeah. Okay. So like this is the other type, the basic type, and then like filters, I can this little filter builder, equals whatever. Or I could do it here. I can choose if I want it in the where or having clause, which affects grouping and totaling type stuff.
So here they do have some degree of like a little more drag and drop, or like not even that, but like a wizard. We used to call wizards. Yeah, I'm old enough to remember that.
Yeah, right? So you can do candid, gender.
Gotcha. So it's got a little calc builder at this level, probably because the idea is there may be end users who are doing this, but everything up to this point has been designed with the assumption that you're a SQL expert.
Yep. So this is the wizard, the builder, and then like, here it built gender in, and it is nice that it exposes the SQL so you can edit stuff. That is nice. Sometimes tools, they're kind of like it's hidden.
Right. They don't show you the SQL, even though that's what's happening.
That's what's happening. So you got to use a builder, can't edit it, or their own custom language on top of SQL.
Okay.
Right. So that's that. And then there's some other stuff on server pagination where it's just like every time because by default it just loads everything, and then like this is front end pagination. Server pagination, like if you have a huge data set, you can every page it'll just requery the server.
Gotcha. So you can control, does it load all at once or does it load as you page down? Yep.
And from here, like from the Query Explorer, you could download the CSV. From here, you can download the CSV as well.
Okay. So you have options.
Download as an image. It'll just take a screenshot. That sort of stuff.
Okay.
Right. And then, so the customization, like what you've seen here is like basically what exists. The customization is like how long do you want each page to be, that kind of stuff. One nice customization is this search bar. Quite like it. Just,
so you can just automatically include a search in the visualization.
And that's just part of the visualization. And it searches all of them. Legal.
That's really nice, actually.
That's super nice. You don't have to set it up. You can set up filters later, but
okay.
So let's get on to the dashboards themselves. I think we've got about 20 minutes left.
We do have about 20 minutes left. Yep.
Okay. And then, conditional formatting is not good at all. You can only do it on numbers. Numbers. So if I do salary equals 95,000, it can apply. I don't know if I typed that in wrong. I did not.
Did you do 950? You did 950,000.
I wish that was my salary.
Yeah, right.
And it'll highlight that and like these defaults and stuff, but like you cannot highlight position status and that sort of stuff.
And can you do like complex, like if this is over this and this is under that, then
no.
Okay, so it's just like a single condition and basic.
That's why I said sometimes it's inconsistent. Sometimes it'll like, I can just edit the SQL. Like here, I can edit the SQL. If I just had a SQL editor and I could do it in any column I wanted, awesome. I can't.
Right.
It's just one of those things.
Okay. Okay. So dashboards. We got like 20 minutes left.
Yep.
The final step of the BI stack.
Yep. Like in charts, there was one thing I had to go back and like split off a data set to do custom sort ordering for the aggregation type I was using because it wasn't available for raw query mode. Don't know why. So that's just one of the things I had to do. So the dashboards. So instead of creating a new one, I already created one. Now, so Are you still seeing my screen?
Yeah,
are
I
you
can see
seeing
your screen. Yep.
Are you see that I tabbed over to a different view?
I did, yeah.
Okay. So this is like the STB job posting tracker that I created in Power BI, right? And
Yeah.
then I created in QuickSight. And I was able to hit all these features, right?
Mm-hmm.
You will see that in QuickSight. You'll see that in Superset. I was definitely not able to hit all these features.
Okay.
Like alternate row highlighting. That's just on by default. You see it slightly highlighted, and you can't
it's
really.
It's quite
customize.
hard to see on my screen, but yeah, I trust you.
Actually, it doesn't even make it that much bigger.
No.
There, I made it even bigger.
That's
like
what we call
it's very subtle.
design.
It's nice. The default's nice, but like, and like, so you cannot have filters, slicers as they're called in Power BI, inline. You cannot have them embedded.
Okay.
They can only be over here.
So that's why we have empty column, empty column, empty column.
Yep. Because, like if I was actually building this to put out to people, like I'd find something else to put there. But I'm just doing a direct comparison of what you can and cannot do.
Okay.
Right. So you can, another thing like the conditional highlighting, the offer, vacant, canceled, the colored, right? You can't do that. You can't do that. Not out of the box. So I'm saying you can't do these things, right?
Yeah.
You can kind of do these things if you really want to, because there is, I'm not in edit dashboard. I'm just in view. I'm in view dashboard. If I go to edit dashboard, also the editor, it's kind of like I had to add these empty columns. It's kind of clunky. The builder, it's kind of clunky.
Let me ask you: so there's two. Well, there's probably more than two, but two main ways that BI tools tend to work. One way is that you build the visualizations, and then a dashboard is a collection of visualizations.
It's what it is.
Okay. So it's like Tableau. That's the Tableau.
It's like Tableau. Well, I think they started in like 2017 or 2019 or something.
Yeah.
So they were just copying Tableau.
Gotcha.
That's exactly. So it flows. And also all the data flows that way too. Data set, chart, dashboard. Edit a data set. It affects the chart. It affects the dashboard. Same for charts. If at the chart, it just shows up in all the dashboards. It's kind of how it goes. So like, on the right here, you see, here's all the different charts. Now, if I want a different chart, right? Relocation ability. I don't know. There we go. That's one of the sample ones. So what this is doing, each visualization is running its own query.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So now it's referencing those two queries. Right?
Gotcha.
Whatever query this was, and then this query and this query.
And
like how smart it is, I don't know.
This is. I was just thinking, like, okay, under the hood, it could be that the query engine's really smart, and if you have 5 visualizations built on the same data set, that it's able to, reuse the query, or it could be that it's literally issuing the exact same SQL 7 times. And I think you probably don't know that right now.
I don't know that because you can set up a caching layer and you can cache things. And now, how smart is that? That's one of those things. Like unless I really tested it, I couldn't know.
As someone who's in charge of a very advanced BI and memory cache, I can tell you it's quite complicated.
I believe it. I believe it.
There's a lot of decisions to be made related to that. Okay. So
that's that.
Now, a chart can be used in more than one dashboard.
Yes.
If I change the chart, will it automatically update across dashboards? Okay.
Yes. 100%. Right. So then let me go. I'm in edit mode. Let me go back to. I just have to hit the back button, I guess, and then come back to here. Right. So then out of like, you don't add filters in edit mode. You add it here, but it is in the view mode, but like it applies to everyone. It's a little weird. So like, and then you've got the filters, really basic.
Mm-hmm.
I would call them really limited.
Okay. And it's a slide out menu on the left-hand side.
It's a slide out menu. You can't preset. You can have it be up top.
Sure.
Superset, you can't. That's one of those things that they made, but they didn't put into the base tool. So yeah, I would call that's why I say you need to customize this stuff. So this is fine as like, I would not use this as like, we're replacing Power BI and this is what end users are using. I would not do that. Right. Just because it's a little limited, but it depends on what you need. Right.
Yeah.
As like an embedded solution, a custom embedded solution that you customize, I do not see self-service being part of this ever for end users. It's not so. Airbnb, they're basically ones who created this before as part of this open source Apache, whatever. like they have this internal like data viewing tool, right? And they basically just like super simplified this and like stripped out a bunch of stuff and just lets people like browse tables and like select a few things on a chart. Perfect use case. Perfect use case. You have your internal data exploration tooling, right? Perfect use case. Another great use case, embedded software applications, right? Like an embedded application, like you need some sort of charting and that sort of stuff. And like I say, because like maybe saying like, well, there are other visualization tools. Why don't you just use those? And this was going to segue into the next part, which is
before you do that, we do have a question from Michael Webb. Thanks for tuning in, Michael. Are there ways to create custom visualizations like D3.js?
I think so. I think that because in the documentation I've seen references to D3, so I think Apache eCharts uses D3, right?
Okay.
So like if you can customize Apache eCharts because they're open source. So like I think those are built using D3. So yes, you can, but you're doing that at a lower level than this interface, right? You're not doing it through this interface.
Okay.
Okay.
Moving on.
God, like we're getting to the end here. We have 15 minutes left. I can go a little over, so that's fine.
Yeah.
If you can, Ryan. So that's
a little
no
bit.
problem. I can go 10 minutes over. That would be no problem for me. Okay. So I showed you the dashboard stuff really quick, and you can do more stuff, but you've got it. It's not wow. It's there. So let's go into some of as I was saying, like why wouldn't you just use a visualization chart? Why don't you just use eCharts directly if you're building this? Because Superset, as like base Superset, has some enterprise features, right?
Okay.
That seem fairly good. It has row level security. It has users and roles, and it has content control using those users and roles, and it can connect through like OAuth, LDAP, Active Directory, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what kind of makes this like why would you use this instead of just visualization tools, charts? It's like because it has those built in, so you can so like if you have an embedded solution, like either internal that you're using or like external, you're building like some sort of data exploration thing or something, and you just need charts. Like maybe you're like a factory part automation, whatever, and like there's some standard tooling, and you're building an add-on product for that. Like, and you need to be able to integrate with like Active Directory and all this other stuff, and have like each factory sees their own parts and only that kind of stuff. You can do that here. This has that enterprise integrated stuff in it, right? So that's why you would use this,
as opposed to just the underlying open source library. It's like they did all the plumbing for you.
Yeah, they did all the plumbing for you. Like, well, why wouldn't I just use eCharts, right? Because if this didn't have these enterprise features, right? This row level security, this user access control, why wouldn't you just use the eCharts? But it does have them, so you can just plug it in. It's like way easier to build these like custom solutions.
Yeah.
So over here in security, this can you can connect this to OAuth. It uses Flask, something, or Flask application builder or something for this stuff, like another open source tool. So using all these open source tools. But I'm just doing this manually. I did not set up authentication. So I set up a few like Ryan Dolly, Dean Dolly, right? And then there are different roles here. Gamma is one of their default named roles that allows you to do certain things. Basically just view dashboards, charts, and data sets, but doesn't let you edit data sets or charts or dashboards, that sort of stuff. That's what you are, Ryan, because I don't trust you. SQL Lab. So there are a whole bunch of different,
So you do role-based security.
Role-based security, but you also have role-based access to content.
Okay.
Right. So I added you to finance. So if I think I'll just do this real quick. Localhost 8088. Nope, not 8083. 8088. And this will help show Ryan. The password is password, but this is on my local machine, so I don't care if everyone knows it.
While you're doing that, Aaron says, if there's no self-service, I want no part of it. And John Standifer says, thanks us for covering security as part of the review.
Yep, we are covering security. So like I just logged in, and like what you see is, so I added you to, let me bring this over here for a sec. You're in finance, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we go to roles, I created finance. Let's look at finance. Finance is here. It has permission. The users under finance are you. And it has permissions to these data sources, right? So you're not going to want to do this manually. So like, if you're connected to AD, then maybe like you have the AD group, and then like access to the AD group gives everyone has this role. So then you only have to set this up once.
Yeah.
But like right here manually, if you're like using some different system, it's kind of like, that's why I said it's like out of the box. Like you need to set up more stuff to make this stuff robust. But so like you have access to these two data sets. Now the way it works is access to a data set automatically grants access to all charts that use that data set and all dashboards that use those charts.
Okay.
Right? There is a flag you can turn on that will, I mean, not in the interface, like you edit like a YAML file, but that allows it to go the other way as well, where you grant access to a dashboard and that automatically grants access to all charts and all data sets used by those charts. You can do it either way. It's just a flag. So yeah, so there's that. So I have access to you on these two, and then I have this over here. Let's come up here. Right, so you have access to this. Now you'll notice when you're added to finance, and this will segue into row level security. You're added to the finance, right? So that means if I go in here, you only see finance. The total is lower because you're only seeing the finance department.
Gotcha.
Row level security.
Row level security.
Row level security. So yeah, different departments will see different stuff as you set it up, right? I set it up super basic because it's just the demo, but you can set it up from what I've seen, and with the integrations it has, you could set this up like any enterprise row level security, right? And then you just create that here, right? So I create finance department clause. I wrote the clause, the SQL clause when department equals this.
So this is again like where clause injection.
Where clause injection, right?
Yep.
So like if if a new department is created, like you'll have to do this unless you set up the tooling that's automatic. Because like the API is pretty robust because Apache Superset is built on all these open source tools, which have APIs and all this stuff you can edit. So you can do it, right? You can create a Python script that looks at the Active Directory every morning and then updates all the stuff. You can do that, or you can have it sync. It'll sync automatically, right? But if you need to like create, there's a new department, you need to create with this whatever, yada yada. You can do that.
If you can come up with the logic to automatically apply row level security, but by like, when we add a new field or a new record to this table, then automatically take the name out of.
Yep. And there's lots of like group key, which allows you to like specify like, whether it's the row level security is applied as an and or an or, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And there's
These
also
are important things to think about.
Yeah. The Jinja templates. That's an option. So like in the data set, you can include Jinja templates, which allows you at runtime to inject parameters. So you can inject username into the SQL.
Yeah.
Because Jinja is an open source thing, and whatever query engine they're using is open source, and their query engine they're using supports Jinja, so they basically just turned it on. That's the advantage of this. But like, it is not like built-in tooling. You need to figure it out. You need to figure out how Jinja works. You need to figure out how that integrates. You need to turn on the flag, right? This is not a plug and play tool. I would not call this a plug and play tool. I would call this a robust tool set of BI features that you can use to kind of build your own tool into whatever you need, right? That's what I would call this. And I'll just go into alert and reports real quick.
Yeah, let's check it out. And then let's do the overall scoring.
Yep. So the report is just it's scheduled. It uses some other open source thing to do the scheduling.
Go figure.
I don't remember what it is. But it's like report contents dashboard or chart. So this does what like all modern BI tools that didn't know that PDFs were important until they actually interacted with enterprises. The dash, if you get the email dashboard, it just takes a screenshot. It just takes a screenshot. So if you have a chart and there's some stuff up top and there's a table, and that table has a scroll bar, it doesn't show all the content. It doesn't like automatically split out and paginate it. It just takes the screenshot. Right. If you can't do like each page has this header and things are split out this way. You can't do it. It just takes a screenshot.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep. So
Same
it's not
with
really doing like
No.
in like a Cognos or a business objects where it has really robust PDF generation capabilities.
It's done in the, like I said earlier, this is made by software engineers who read about a feature, and this is how they thought to implement it. Not thinking of like what it's actually good for, right?
Yep.
What the actual use, like how like the use cases for it, right? And then one thing is charts. If you do a chart, you can have it be send as CSV, and it'll be the full data, so that's good. That's something they added within the last 2 years, because I saw an old comments about people complaining about not getting the full data, but you do now.
Now, can you do any okay, so you can schedule.
Yep.
Can you do like an event based
Yep. So that's what they call alerts.
Okay.
Like the terminology is weird because it's like event based report sending out, right? They call alerts, but it's like, well, that's the report. Then the alert is just alerts is just you schedule this to run, and when it runs a SQL query, and if that SQL query matches your target value, then it sends the report. Right.
So you could have some really complicated logic and then say, if this complicated logic is true, then equal 1, else equals 0. And then you would say here, if the value, run the SQL every Monday morning at 9. And if the value is equal to 1, then screenshot the dashboard and send it to Ryan.
Yes. Or send a CSV. Yep. Right.
Okay.
And now you can build, like, the APIs are good because this is built on open source. Like, just turn on the API for that. And then, like, if you want to do that, can you do bursting? No.
Okay.
No, you just can't.
Right.
Could you write a Python script that like adjusts filters and blasts out? I guess. Why not?
Yeah.
But you're building bursting. It's not a feature of the tool. But that's what Superset is. That's what Superset is. It's this set of open source tools bundled together that in a kind of cohesive way, so that you can like create your own custom thing.
I think the really interesting quote that you've delivered for us is that Superset is like what a BI tool would be like if a bunch of software engineers read about BI tools and then built one.
Yes. Let's do here.
Like almost like if the engineers didn't have a product team.
Yes.
To like steer the features towards usability and business value.
Yes, well, it's open source. These people are just like, oh, people request this, and they just add it, and it's like, oh,
it is literally engineers adding stuff. I mean, it's not 100%. Like that. It literally is that.
Drill to detail is just view table. That's not a drill.
No.
But they heard about drilling, right? I guess it's drill to table detail, but that's not drilling. So, but like they have drilling, they have PDF, they have email, because they just read about this stuff and like they added it.
Yeah.
And this is how they added it. That's how I would describe it. It's a BI made by software engineers, which makes it really good for creating your own custom like BI embedded dashboard, right? Because another thing I didn't show off, like I said, you can't customize things, but you kind of can. Advanced, where is it? I can't find it. But you can overrides. You can do CSS overrides. Like you're literally like inspecting element, right? And then like you're like checking, okay, so that this is what it's called in the HTML CSS, and you're overriding that using the important flag in the CSS. You can do that. I don't remember where it is in here, but it is in here somewhere. So you can do that. So like I said, like, oh, you cannot do conditional highlighting. It's like if you coded that into the CSS, maybe you could. I don't know. But like that's not built in, so it's like very customizable. Right, but this isn't your plug and play BI tool. If your company says we're switching from Power BI to Superset, you're in for trouble.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
if your company says we need to build a data exploration dashboard to embed into our tooling that we give to customers, have you thought about Superset? Superset's great.
Okay.
Now
from a feature perspective, of course, the challenge then is going to be maintenance, and when something goes wrong,
you're the one doing it. But if you're building your own embedded solution, you've got people working on that anyway.
Hopefully,
you never know. Sometimes you'd be surprised to start working with companies, the stuff that flies.
Yes. Okay. So we've to summarize, we've looked at, writing SQL statements as the foundation of getting data into this, data sets as a way to put some metadata or define some custom calculations or metrics on top of your raw SQL. Charts is where you build your visualizations. Dashboards is where you assemble them. It's got row level security. It's got role-based access controls. It's got scheduling and alerting. It does generate PDFs, but it doesn't really do bursting. It just screenshots the PDFs and sends them out. So it's, all the pieces are there.
All the pieces are there.
The way they're done is a little like, if it's like an open source tool. It's like if some passionate engineer decided Superset needs alerting, so they built it themselves, and now
it started as a hackathon project.
Yeah. God, our Good Data Hackathon is coming up next week. I'm curious what's going to be generated there. Okay. All right. So now let's jump into, we're at time here. Thank you everybody for sticking with us. We're going to run a little bit over to go over the kind of conclusions. So we've got our categories for Eric's rubric for grading enterprise business intelligence tools. And now let's take a look at
I've
conclusions.
got this embedded in here. Yeah, I do. I changed the language a little bit for some of these, but these are all still here.
Yep.
So enterprise. So initially, I was vacillating between this tool is terrible until like I understood what this tool is for.
Yep.
Which it's not a plug and play BI solution. It's a suite of tools that like you can integrate, like and save you a lot of freaking time. Right. So like that's why I'm not giving any of these a straight up star rating, because it doesn't make sense, because this is not a plug and play BI tool solution. So I can't, if I rated it as a plug and play BI tool solution, it'd be low. If I rated it as a set of tools you can use, I'd rate it high. But but this is a BI review, so I'm just not going to give any stars. Paginated reporting doesn't have, not really. As we've talked about, bursting doesn't have it all. Could you code it yourself? Because with the API to like, change this filter and then send to this person.
Right.
Yeah. But like it's not included.
You could like go into Python and write a loop that says go through and look at the name.
Run the SQL, figure out the department, use this table to look up which email is associated with the department, change this filter, then call the API for the report sender to send the report to that person.
Yeah,
you could do that 100%. Right. But that's why I said this is a set of tools. It doesn't have bursting. Could you build bursting if you really need it? Yeah. It's not built into the interface in any way. Has row level security. I think this is one of the strong suits. It was really easy for me to set up. Once I understood what was going on, once I understood like the flow of data and stuff, it was really easy for me to set up, use that. Role-based content access. One thing I did not bring up, there are no folders. There are no folders. So if someone has access to all these different departments, they just have all the reports. There are no folders. I read online that some people are put the department name and head just so you could see what section it's coming, what department it's coming from, because there are no folders. No folders. Ease of administering. As this raw BI tool, not very easy because everything's manual. As here are the tools you have to build into your custom solution. Ease of administering is way easier than building it yourself. So like, how am I going to give that a star? So it's like, it depends. As like a software developer, ease of administering is great because you have all these API. As like just your BI guy, the administrating is terrible because you have to do all this API stuff. General BI and data features, visualizations and lists. A little limited. They can do stuff. If you really need to modify it, you can. It's Apache eCharts D3. Level experts needed to create reports and dashboards. High. high. Interface wasn't super easy for me to decode initially because like you're constantly going from spot to spot, right? Sometimes you click on something, it's a new tab. Sometimes you stay in the same tab and you lose where you were. There's not that much, the language of the user language to like the training of the user of how to use it is not consistent in that way. So, and it's just what like end users aren't writing Jinja templates,
Right.
Integration with other tools and data stack. Great. Awesome. All this stuff is open source and integrates with other stuff. Integration is great. It's what it's made for, basically. I think that's been the theme.
But it's definitely a case where like if what integration means to you is do I have the tools to build it, then the answer is yes.
Yes.
If what it means is like, is there a integrate with DBT button? Like there's no button.
I think there might be like you can use EBT, not EBT, that's food stamps, DBT as a if your company goes to Superset, you might need EBT, but
right. It's the first sign.
It's the first, but to replace Power BI, then you might need EBT. But yeah, integrate with other tools. It depends on if you how you see and use this tool. Like it can be very useful. Completeness of vision. I think I changed this to completeness of vision because that already kind of means something. I changed this to like tool cohesiveness. Like how cohesive are all these different parts? And the answer is it's not.
Yeah.
Right. These like because right away you were confused by the SQL query versus the data set.
I was confused instantly.
I was confused instantly too. It took me a while of kind of messing with this. Right.
Yeah.
So how cohesive are the different components? Not very cohesive, but if you bring your own glue, you can tie them all together for your own custom thing.
Yeah.
They're cohesive in the sense that they got APIs and you can tie them together, but out of the box, it's not. It ain't it, champ. Are the AI features they advertise actually any good? They don't advertise any AI features, and they don't have any AI features. 5 stars. 5
it's
stars.
Refreshing, actually.
It's like they're not. This is what we got. 5 stars. We're not doing any AI. If you want to integrate it yourself, I guess, but no AI. 5 stars. They're not. There's nothing to shift shift through. Sift through. So community, good documentation. This is one of like, as far as like small BI tools, the documentation's decent. The install was really easy, but the thing is like once you get into the weeds, like it uses Flask app builder, I think for like authentication, whatever. It'll give you like it'll explain it a little bit, but it's like linked to Flask app builder's documentation, which is super technical. Right. Yeah. So there's lots of really technical documentation for the individual components. And there's some documentation about how these components work inside Superset itself. But you may find yourself digging real deep into something because it's like Superset is just using this open source thing. Right. So the Superset team might even not necessarily know exactly how it works because you end up not using a Superset API. You use the Flask application builder API, which wasn't built by the Superset team. So the documentation is like, there's lots of detailed stuff and like, it's all open source. So you can go look at the code if you want. Good learning resources. There are some YouTube videos for like setting up your first chart. As far as like resources for like understanding how everything works together, I think this video may be the best one in existence. Now, so there are some learning resources. There's some YouTube videos, but they're all fairly basic. Strong user community. There is a Slack channel that has, I think, 15,000 users. I went in and people were asking questions and there were some answers. But a lot of time the answer was like, oh, you can't really do that.
You can't do it. Yeah.
Like,
how do I blank? And the answer is you don't.
It's like, that's not really a thing. Like we're considering adding that, but you could add, but like I said, you could customize it yourself. It's open source. There are lots of APIs. And they had like a AI chatbot that would answer your questions, but I went into it yesterday to check it out and it wasn't working. So I don't know. Does it have a future? Are you vendor locked? Does it have a future? I think so. Open source, along with preset, continues to exist. I don't know their finances. Maybe they won't exist in 2 years. It'll continue to exist, but it's not owned by preset. It's part of like Apache Software Foundation as one of their top level tools. So as long as that still gets funding, it'll still exist. Airbnb uses it extensively. Their advertising page says Lyft uses it. I don't know how extensively they use it, but I know Airbnb uses it extensively. So it's going to keep existing, I believe, for a while. Even if it's abandoned, it's open source. So if you really want to continue it, you could continue your own kind of development, but most places aren't going to do that. I would not want to maintain the tool itself myself. Cost, it's free. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
It's free.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I were to try to sum up what you've told us about Superset, and this was an awesome deep dive. If you like this type of thing, let us know in the comment of this video what other tools you would like to see Eric review. Eric is kind of our BI tool review guru. And so let us know what you'd like Eric to look at. But if I had to sum this up, it would be, it's really a collection of open source projects that have been assembled into a BI tool, but it hasn't been done by a commercial vendor. It itself is also an open source project. And so it has the advantages and disadvantages of that way of developing software. It's low cost. It's, but then, what you don't have, it's low cost and it has a lot of features, but then it doesn't really feel designed.
No, it's not purpose built.
Right. It's not purpose built.
Totally purpose built. You could do 89% of what you need in a BI tool in QuickSight.
Right.
QuickSight required much less thinking on my part.
Right. Because it has a big product team,
which is a sign of how easy the tool is to use. And,
the other reason why that is.
Why is that?
At least a decent chunk of the QuickSight team comes from Cognos.
Well, that makes sense. I cut my teeth on Cognos.
Probably some similar design language and philosophy that goes into it.
QuickSight had the best paginated report builder I've seen in a modern tool.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
Like it's the best I've seen. I've only checked out QuickSight that had it. So
hardly anybody else does. Almost nobody does. Yeah, so like the whole list of modern tools that do paginated reporting is
that aren't just screenshots. That's what Tableau does too.
So Kiran, whoop. So this is a good suggestion. Metabase and I've never know whether to call this Redash or Redash. Yeah. I don't know.
I would read Redash.
Metabase and Redash in a comparison of these open source tools. And then John wants us to take a look at Omni. So Omni, to my knowledge,
didn't we?
Well, we actually, our very first episode was an interview with the Omni CEO. Yeah. No, our first interview episode.
Yeah.
Our very first episode was Is Tableau Dead?
Yeah.
But our second episode was an interview with Colin, who's the CEO of Omni. It might be interesting to take a look at Omni. Okay. Well, thank you for that deep dive into to Superset. My main takeaway, I would say, is that it's certainly not appropriate if you're looking to replace an internal BI tool. Like Power BI or Tableau or Cognos, like you're just, you're not going to do
a lot of the comments, because I searched the for what people were saying about it on on Reddit and stuff. A lot of them were like, "Hey, some of the comments were like, hey, my boss wants me to look into replacing Power BI with Superset," and the answer is no.
Right.
Do not. Do not do that. Power BI is a big stack of dirty cobwebby tech that makes you write DAX and has all these crazy stuff, but it can do the stuff you need it to do, without having to go into the source code,
without you having to edit Jinja files.
Exactly. You can do inline slicers / filters, which you cannot do in Superset.
Yeah. So, okay. So there you have it. Like it's Redash. Thank you, Kiran.
Yeah. And then Metabase came up a lot in comparisons. So I was thinking that'd be a natural next review for me.
Is Metabase?
Yeah.
Well, we do have one on the calendar coming up. So we're going to wrap the show up here.
Yeah.
Thank you for sticking with us, those of you who have to go long on this one. The very, very good job, Eric. Thank you for this. I think you've done us a big favor. Now, coming up next week, and I don't have it's upstairs because I was reading it last night, but Next week, we have Tiankai Feng and his book to do an interview with him on his book, Humanizing Data Strategy, which I'm about a third of the way through. Let me tell you, it's fire. I love this book, and I cannot wait to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
So join us next week. Now, that is not at our normal time. Normally, we broadcast Thursdays at noon.
Yeah,
I'm going to be in Prague.
Yeah.
Right.
So the 16th.
I'm going to be in,
or when is it?
It's the 9th.
9th.
Yep.
All right. Normally, we're every Thursday during our season, right? So if you liked what you saw, check us out here on LinkedIn. Check us out on YouTube. Just search for Super Data Brothers. That's us.
Yep.
But next week we're actually on Wednesday, and we'll go back to normal Thursday.
Both. The interview with Tiankai is next week. He's awesome. Check him out on LinkedIn. You are going to love this dude. I cannot wait to talk to him. And his book is fire. So pick up a copy of his book so that you are informed and educated and can ask good questions on next week's show. And so, we look forward to that, and stay tuned for the rest of the season. We got lots of cool guests coming up. So thank you, Eric, for the Superset review. I think this is super useful. Good job.
Thank you. And thank you everyone who tuned in. If it's your first time, this is the kind of stuff we cover. A lot of interviews, but a lot also with industry experts and different BI tool vendors and a whole bunch of different stuff like that. And then also these deep dives in individual tools. We usually do a deep dive about once or twice a season, and a season is usually about a quarter of a year to half a year.
Yep. So we look forward to seeing you next time here on the Super Data Brothers Show. Again, next week at Wednesday, October 9th at 12 p.m. Eastern. Ignore where it says Thursday. You can join us to talk to Tiankai Feng live. Get your questions answered about his book, Humanizing Data Strategy, which from what I can tell is developing. It's like a snowball rolling downhill. It's picking up steam here. So I think this is going to be an influential book with influential ideas. You're going to want to know about it. Tune in next week to hear from Tiankai. And until then, I am Ryan.
I am Eric.
And we are the Super Data Brothers. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.